So, okay. So, is property title secure? Yes, it is. The moment you purchase real estate, and the title get transferred into your name, it's clean and clear. So, there's no claim possible on your new title. It will be before the title gets into your name. So that's why it's important that the agent, when the agent lists a property, they will do a title search to make sure it's clean and clear or has only a mortgage on it. For example, the mortgage will be paid by the escrow company. There's no liens like court cases and that kind of stuff. I've had people try to list a property and they didn't even know about the problems and huge problems they had. One day I had somebody who bought an easement from a neighbor and his lawyer never registered the easement. He couldn't even get legally to his own property. And I said, I'm sorry, until you have it registered, then I will list the property for you. And he was really mad at me. He hung up on the phone because I called him about it. I went to see the property. I found out about the problem. I called him up. I said, I'm sorry, I cannot list the property. He got really mad at me. And 5 years later, he says, I apologize. You were so right. It took me 5 years to get this corrected. So now I want to try to sell my property again. But that's what it is. You kind of hit on all kinds of problems. But the moment it's registered in your name, it will be clear forever until you sell it again. The lawyer, the closing attorney, and that's why it's so important you use a closing attorney who speaks English and who specializes in real estate. That's the whole reason. And so the money will not be wired to the seller until the lawyer or the notary public will be totally sure that the title is clear. So we don't have title insurance. We used to have for many, many years, many years ago. INS is the local insurance company. Carlos and Juan Carlos, who spoke to you about insurances, they represent the INS. It's a state monopoly. So they will allow only car insurances and health insurances by other corporations. But the title is not allowed by law. So they shut it down, but it doesn't make sense anyway with the way the law works here, because the title company here that was to a title were charging people 1% for title insurance, and it was all BS because they wouldn't insure it if it didn't have a clear title. Because the moment you transfer the title, it's clear. Okay, so title insurance, forget it. But that's the reason we use escrow. In a minute, more about escrow. So in Costa Rica, we have indefeasible title, so it cannot be made void. Okay, that's important to know because that makes it all clear. Now, there could be other problems like squatters, like fence lines that are in the wrong place. There's a ton of other things that can go wrong, like in any other country. You have restrictions, easements, mortgages. Mortgages, for example, if the people that you're buying from have a mortgage, the title company will make sure, the escrow company with your lawyer will make sure that that mortgage will be canceled with the seller's money. Now there's a lot of banks that put the money or put the property in trust. And just as an extra protection, it's easier for them to foreclose when the mortgage holder does not pay his debt or her debt. Foreclosure is easy, but selling is not so easy. It's taken me up to 6 months to clear a mortgage, but that's what the escrow companies are good at. Easements, for example, you might have easements shared with a neighbor. You might have restrictions with, like, you're bordering on a national park. We have, I don't know, 2,000 national parks in Costa Rica. So if you're bordering on a national park, you will see that you won't be able to build on certain areas. All that is important. Being an agent in Costa Rica seems simple, and it is to a lot of people, but there's a lot of restrictions that are important. If your property is on a river, you have setbacks. And depending on how large your river is, you will have a 4 meter, a 20 meter, or 40 meter setback. So I have seen properties that have 5 meters, which is 12 feet of property, buildable property, and the rest you can't build on. So why buy it? And people don't know. Okay, and they will try to stick it to you. If you don't have the good, and besides, most lawyers will not take the survey map and go to the property, you look at the property, you look at the survey map. Your realtor should do that. And most realtors will say, no, it's the lawyer's responsibility. So they kick the ball around and nobody does anything. And that's the reason you need to be careful who you do business with. We check the property title, all our agents check it to be able to upload it to the website. Before it gets published, I personally check the title again before I publish. Once you're making an offer, the realtor will check the title again. The realtor will send the offer to the lawyer, and the lawyer will write up the option purchase sale agreement and will check the title again. And the day of the closing, they will check the title again. So that's 5 times. So you can be sure it's gonna work. Okay, so that's why the notary public is so important, because he's the last one to check. Between you making an offer and the lawyer closing the deal, writing up the deed, anything can happen. And that's when you want to make sure that the money does not get to the seller. Costa Ricans give earnest money directly to the seller. They hand it over to the seller. Everybody used to do, or everybody does business like that in Costa Rica. It happened to me like 30 years ago. We did that because there was the Tica way of doing things. And the poor man passed away. And the wife had to go through court for 2 years to make her available to sell, or to give her the powers of attorney to sell the property. Meanwhile, we had put in an offer. He took the earnest money deposit, and she used the money to bury the husband. We were, for 2 years, stuck, or we were going to be stuck. What we did was a rent back, so the rent was used to pay off the property, and we got it all figured out. But that's the kind of problem you could hit on if you don't do it right. In short, you look at property, you make an offer, your realtor negotiates the offer and get counter offer whatever times is necessary, and the details. When is the closing date? How much earnest money deposit? How much is who's going to pay for the closing costs, etc., etc. Once the offer is agreed on by both parties, it goes to your lawyer. Your lawyer writes up the option to purchase sale agreement or letter of intent, or whatever you want to call it. With that, I usually wait for the home inspection to make sure that the money goes into escrow, the earnest money goes into escrow. It's better to get rid of the home inspection first, because if everything is fine, okay, cool. But if there's a big problem with the house and you have the money in escrow, now everybody is going to fight over that money. So it's better to get rid of that, get the home inspection out of the way before you put money in escrow. Once that's done, it goes to escrow, earnest money deposit. You got 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or whatever you negotiate to get to the closing. That's why the closing date is so important. That will give you plenty of time to do anything you need to do to bring your furniture or whatever. It gives your lawyer the time to do the due diligence process, and you go to closing, and that's when you send the last week, you send the money to the escrow, and the escrow money will disperse. Escrow will request know your customer form, which says who you are, where you come from, what you did for a living or do for a living, where did your money come from the stock market, from life savings, from selling your house, from selling a boat or whatever. They will ask for the origin of the funds, the proof of the origin of the funds, so they need to see your balance sheet for the last 3 months that shows that money has been sitting in your account and you're ready to roll for closing. sounds like big, it sounds difficult, but it's not. It's just a step-by-step process. And with a good lawyer, even without a good real estate agent, with just a good lawyer, you're able to do this. Okay? Any questions about that legal part? No? Good. Restrictions. So there you are with the rivers and the forest, and you've seen the 150 meter and the 200 meter from the ocean. So Costa Rica is very nature protective. That's why those setbacks. It's to protect nature and not to allow you to build in the wrong places. You will see some of the cities in Costa Rica have zoning. Now the government is pushing to make it mandatory for all the cities in the whole country to do a zoning. And zoning restrictions are important. Land is residential, commercial, industrial, for example, or it's mixed. It will say what the density is. So how many inhabitants per square meter or per hectare? So some are high density, they will say 75% you can build on the land. You can go 12 stories high or only 3 stories high. Escazú, you can go 12 stories high, and Santa Ana, which is a next door city, allows only 3 stories on most of their land. They can do 10% density, which you will find in a lot of areas like what you're seeing there. You know, closer to the beach and high in the mountains, a lot of it is 10 and 25% density. Atenas, for example, is 25% density. So they fix an acre and a quarter or an acre and 3/4 is the minimum size of a lot. You can't have small lots. And they will allow only one house with a guest house and a pool, and that's it. It's all to protect nature. That's why Costa Rica is still a beautiful country. The government has done a real good job on that. And all those restrictions are important when you buy, to make sure you're buying in the right place. You want to buy in a condominium, you want to make sure you look at the bylaws. You look at the financials of the condominium. Maybe the condominium is broke. If you have 20 people who are in a divorce and the ex-husband doesn't pay, and so the ex-wife doesn't have money to pay the HOA fees, and in beach areas, you'll see some condo fees up to $1,500 a month. So now you have only 20 condominiums, you have 5 of them that don't pay, they're broke. So you want to look at all that kind of stuff. Are there going to be extraordinary payments because they got to fix the pool and it's a lot of money, the HOA doesn't have enough money? You want to look if there's an agreement. The last year on the HOA meetings, if they said, hey, we want to do an extraordinary for $10,000, you don't want to get stuck with that problem. So see, that is why it's so important to know what you're doing and find a good lawyer who will do the due diligence process and follow up on all of that. Always, even though the realtor might not do it or the lawyer might not do it, get a copy of the survey map, of the plot map. Grab it and stand in front of the property and look if it more or less agrees with the lines that you are looking at. 20 years ago, we showed with a client of mine the listing of another agent. 4 little houses, rental houses, was an investment property for a client of mine, and it looked beautiful. 4 little houses. They had a parking, they had gardens, and there was a park, beautiful park next door. It was great. It was a great place, and was at a good price. So I said, okay, let's go back again in a couple of days, and I asked the other agent for a survey map, a copy of the survey map. We got there, and I said, this is strange because it's only half the property is on the survey map. Is there another one? No, this is it. Turned out the seller was a lawyer and was selling half the city park. He was selling half the park. He just moved the fence. And the fence, putting it in the right place, you couldn't get into the second and the third and the fourth house, only in the first 2 houses because access was through the park. It was amazing. You know, that's very unusual, but that's the kind of stuff that you want to be careful with. if the survey map doesn't have the setbacks from the rivers, in VU, that's here in San Jose, that can be requested. Always tell the realtor to tell the seller to get it. And it's not your job to get that kind of stuff. If necessary, that's why it's important to always make note of the due diligence time, the 1 month or 2 months or 3 months for the due diligence process, so the lawyer has the time to do all that due diligence. If the seller doesn't deliver in time, you'll have to extend on that. Also, try to get also the possibility of getting an extension on the closing date, if necessary. We used to not put in anything until we just had a closing date, let's say February 25th or before. That's what we would say. So you could close on the 15th if you wanted to, if the money arrived early or whatever reason. Until COVID hit. We had a ton of contracts. COVID hit. People couldn't travel. People were not selling the property that they were supposed to be closing on in the US and didn't have the money to buy the property here. We almost lost like 30 sales within my office when COVID hit. We saved them all, but it needed a lot of talking and meeting with the sellers for the sellers to realize, you know, COVID is hitting. You're not going to sell to anybody. You might as well keep the buyer that we have now. Let's request for an extension and put another $5,000 in escrow. Doesn't matter. We want to make sure that the buyer can buy and that the seller can sell. That's really what the deal is all about. We saved all these closings. We had one that took all the way to the end of COVID. A couple from Texas, they lost their sale. And the guy selling here in Puriscal, which was kind of in the middle of nowhere, half an hour out of town. And he was a doctor, and his wife was in the States, and he couldn't travel, and she couldn't travel. And they've been apart for like two and a half years. And he was going nuts because he wanted to sell, and his agent was not cooperating at all. Actually, at the closing, his realtor did not take him back to his neighbors where he was moving in for a couple of days. I drove all the way to Puriscal because I felt bad for the guy. You know, it's like, come on, it's like you want to make things happen. But not every agent is, you know, they're interested in taking the money. Yes, in making the money, but working hard to make, because they don't often understand all of this and all the relations it has to the title and option to purchase sale agreement and obligations. Okay, right now, I have a buyer, I have a seller who wants to walk. I'm the buyer representative, and the seller wants to walk because she can't find the right condo to buy. Thank God we backed it up so that she will be losing $15,000 if she walks from the closing. That's why it's so important to put it all together, because if not, poor buyers, my buyers, have waited 3 months to get to the closing, and now the seller is walking and they can start all over again. Those details are kind of important, right? For sale by owner, we'll never tell you about all those restrictions. Property values. Okay, this is kind of a hassle. It's hard to explain. What is your property value? Really, the main one, okay, the Ministry of Finance is the one that decides how much is the value of the land and how much is the value of the construction. There's guides to do that. You need to be a genius to understand those. I've worked with them for 20 years. Every time I calculate it, they tell me it's all wrong. So go figure. I think I would know how to do it, but it's hard to figure it out. Really what's important is not what you paid for it. What is important is what the municipality or the city where you're buying, every 5 years it has to be updated, and they're the ones who are telling you what the real value is of your property and what used to be calculated for your taxes. Okay, 0.25%, we'll get to that later on. 0.25% on the registered value by the municipality is what you pay on property taxes in Costa Rica, which is very little. Okay, that's $250 on every $100,000 value. Cheap, huh? I don't know where you guys come from, but in California, I know some people who pay quite a bit more. Um, these are the guys that are really in the saddle. The National Registry, which is where your deed gets registered, is really not so important because that's what you pay for it. But you know what? If you do it, the laws here are kind of funny sometimes, all the time. If you buy a property for $200,000 because you're getting a bargain, because it's falling apart, and you buy it as a fixer-upper. But if that property is registered in the National Register for $400,000, you cannot transfer the title for less than $400,000 in cost. So the transfer cost of the title is always going to be like that. And you'll find out that in the city, it's going to be registered also at $400,000. I just went through a case like that. It was registered at $1.4 million. The house was falling apart. The lady's been living in it for 45 years. They never did any maintenance at all. It was cheaper to burn it down probably, okay? But they didn't. So I sold it for $650,000. Was more the value of the land. So what we did was we subdivided all the land and left one little plot for the house. So now we had less value to be able to declare a lower value. If not, they would have obliged us to use a transfer tax on $1.4 million. It was ridiculous, but that's the way the law works. Okay, so be careful. If you get a bargain, make sure you check on what the registry is and if you're going to end up paying property taxes based on the higher value. Okay? That's the value declaration every 5 years. Most people will forget about, declaring the value every 5 years. Most people just forget. But then the city will do it for them. 10 years ago, there was a problem. But nowadays, it's actually much easier to let them do it. But make sure that when you buy the property, the owner will give you the proof that it's presented. Because if not, you're going to be paying taxes based on his old or her old value, and you might up paying all kinds of fines and things that you don't have to. So make sure that's one of the paperwork that's really included in the due diligence process. Condominiums, for example, you buy in a condominium and there's 40 that are exactly the same, you would say they would do it for you, right? Because the value is all the same, more or less, depending a little bit and if they're refinished or remodeled or whatever, but they should be more or less the same. They don't. So I'm selling now a condo and they're all different. And it's because each their own, it's like do it together. So that's one of the things you want to check on. We also pay luxury home tax. That really starts over the $600,000 range. Depending a little bit on the size and the luxury of the house and if it's in a high-end community. There's a lot of people who are not paying it, and you might get caught at it. Maybe one day the government will go in and they say, hey, this house is built in 2015, so you are the new owner. You'll have to pay all the fines from 2015 to 2026. You don't want to go there. So also the luxury home tax starts at 0.25%. It goes up to 1.5%. So it can add up, but somebody who buys a $6 million house can afford it. Okay, and that's what it's all about. Yes, ma'am. Your lawyer. The realtor can find out, but usually realtor don't that's part of the due diligence process. But better be careful about it, because I've seen zillion lawyers who don't. I've had closings at my office, and the realtor didn't deliver anything, and it's like, I'm telling the lawyer, it's like, aren't you checking anything? No, we're good to go. No, wait a minute, we're not closing. Come on, let's check the paperwork first. Because guess who you're gonna call? You're gonna call me. Okay, so I want to make sure that's like home inspections. I remember the days we had no home inspectors, and actually we don't have licensed home inspectors. You will see people advertising themselves on Facebook. I'm a licensed home inspector. Yeah, in Florida, but in Florida, construction is totally different. They don't have earthquakes in Florida. You know, the electrical code in Florida is totally different than ours. You will see people say, oh, they don't have construction code in Costa Rica. Wrong. We have a huge code, but people talk without knowing. That's the problem. You'll see on Facebook, you see 200,000 opinions, and they're all wrong because they think they know, and they just don't have a clue. We have excellent codes. We better have, because we have earthquakes. And honestly, since I've been here, we've gone through 4 major earthquakes. And I'm talking about 8.2. And the only thing I've seen here is some broken windows and some cracks in the walls. But I've never, ever seen a house fall down like you see in Japan and you see in Peru and all those places. The whole cities fall apart. Not here, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. The last eruption was the Irazu, and that was in 40 or like in 52 or something like that. You guys are Ticos, you know better than I. But I think it was in 1952. That was the last eruption. There are in the Central Valley. There are a couple in Guanacaste. The Arenal stopped doing anything from the last 10 years. But there are a few. But not really like you see in Guatemala, for example. And no, not really. They are in connection with the earthquakes. So, you know, we have up to like 500 earthquakes a day or tremors that we don't feel. And that's why we're good to go. You know, the more we have, sometimes you feel like this, oh, you know, and most of it is nothing. Or you sit in the car and you think somebody hit you, you know, your car does like that, and yeah, it's not a big deal, and that's better. I've had people say, I'm too close to a volcano to feel safe. Then you're in the wrong country, because we have too many earthquakes, too many volcanoes. We have volcanoes, I don't know, I've never counted them, but we have a ton of of volcanoes here. And honestly, you don't have to. Arenal, they safeguard the whole area around Arenal. The Turrialba is the same. We have had the ashes from the Turrialba here, which is a long way. But we've had the wind, and we have had ashes for like a week and a half. Not very common. But you come to the office and it's like your whole desk is gray. It's like, oh, I'm breathing this, you know, because that's what you do. So, but smokers do too, so it doesn't matter. And our cars, we now have. That's why we have the Machamo and the checkout of the car once a year. So it's not that bad. But in the old days, we had a lot of smog here from the buses and the trucks here. So, but no, not really. Make sure that if you build a house, you use a guy like who was presenting. Architects will always hire a structural engineer. You will see in Costa Rica, there's a lot of people who just hire a foreman because they save the money. They will do the design themselves. But you and I have no clue about structural design. I wouldn't know. My house is designed by a structural engineer, you know, and I have cracks in the wall, you know, and it's normal. And you fix them in the next earthquake, they'll come up again. You know, you can't really get rid of them. That's part of our life, but it's safe, you know, and I've never really seen any serious damage. That's it. 25% of the registered value. You can pay your property taxes in January for quarterly. You can pay quarterly, or you can pay it in January, the end of January. They will know for the whole year. And then you can pay for the whole year. That's what I do. Your property taxes are two things. You got municipal taxes and property taxes. Municipal taxes pays for the maintenance of parks and streets, public streets, and lights, public lights, and that kind of stuff. It's not much. And your garbage collection is separate, which is really cheap here. And it's all included in that. So it's not that you don't want to buy a property because your property taxes are too high. The luxury home tax was invented in 2009, and it's supposed to be used to build houses for the poor. I still haven't figured out where the money goes, but it does not go to build houses for the poor, because we have more poor than we had 20 years ago, or in 2009, which is, yeah, almost 20 years ago. So they're using it for something else. But, and like I said, actually they've changed this. I need to change it. It's up to 1.5%. Okay? So that... At 600,000. Capital gains, I told you about it. So when you're resident, when it's your residence, you don't have to pay capital gains when you sell. But you have to show that you've lived there. And they will look at it in the registered when you traveled out of the country. That's how they're registered. So if these people said, you know, I travel once a year, but they've been out of the country for a whole year, they can see that easily. And then it's not your residence because you're not living there. Okay, but if it's your residence, even if it's in a corporation, which sounds like it's a business, but if you, my house is in a corporation and I live there, so, and I can prove, and I've been paying my power bills and water bills and all that kind of stuff. And there's really no doubt, there's very few lawyers who will kind of fight that and try you to make it pay. Usually in the deed they put in there that in the deed they put that the luxury home, not the luxury home tax, the capital gains tax is the responsibility of the seller up to the closing. So it becomes the responsibility of the buyer after that if they would find out that you have not lived there. They don't have enough people in Costa Rica, in the Costa Rican government, to check on all that. That's all legalese, and it doesn't go anywhere. And that kind of thing, we're still like in the wild, wild west. Okay, we're far away from getting serious on this kind of stuff. But the capital gains you will have to pay if it's like a beach condo. That's an investment. Okay, you might use it for vacationing once in a while. You're going to pay the capital gains tax when you sell for more than you bought it for. Okay? And you will pay 15% over the difference. So you buy it for 100, you sold for 150, you will pay the 15% over the 50,000. That's how it works. Okay? So it's not a big deal either, unless you sell for a ton of money. Hey, and then it's good. Nothing wrong with that, right? Okay, I've said this before, but please hire always a real estate attorney. I sometimes have to work with attorneys. You want to cry. It's terrible. It's terrible. And for me as a realtor, many of these lawyers don't accept us for being knowledgeable about real estate. Oh, you know more than I do. So I usually ask them to send me the deed before we close so I can check on it. And some people don't like that at all. Who's this guy that he wants to see if I'm doing my job right? I've caught mistakes in deeds a zillion times. I've caught a lawyer at closing selling the neighbor's apartment. Okay, and it's so simple because this is my deal. I know, and my agent's the same thing. We know what's going on. We know the title number. We've been doing this for many, many years. And a lawyer is just another deed. You know, a lawyer, it's a draft. They fill out a draft. It takes them an hour to fill out a draft, and that's all they do. And they complain, and that's the reason they complain that realtors make too much money. Okay, that's what it's all about. So, if you decide to buy from a developer, so now you see this new development going up, and the developer is offering you a pre-construction price that's 20% cheaper or 5% cheaper than what it's going to be in the future. And they have their own, and I can assure you, they have their own lawyer. And they will tell you that the price includes the closing cost, their lawyer. Don't go for it. Hire your own lawyer. When they do that, there's something wrong. Been there, done that, okay? You will not get your money back. You will not get the title. I can make you a list of 10,000 issues that go with it. Promises, promises, promises. And promises so easy to make, but so hard to deliver. And that's why you want to always have your own lawyer and always use escrow. I had a client from the seminar last year. They were buying a condo that they really loved, and it was pre-construction. And the developer, and so we negotiated the price, we got a good deal, and it was a penthouse in Santa Ana, in the mountains. The view was awesome. But it was pre-construction. We went into a different tower. And so now the developer says, but we want all the money ahead of time. Oh, wait a minute. You don't agree that we put in the earnest money deposit, and this was last year in September, I think, October. And we were going to close now in January. And no, we want all the money now. I said, there's no way you're going to use my client's money to build your tower. And what if it's not going to happen? Have you been to Jaco, any of you? Have you seen the abandoned project? I own a $200,000 condominium in there. And I'm a realtor, okay? It's happened to me. The bubble burst, and we used our condo for 6 months. And in '08, they pulled the rug from all of us, under us. And it's still in court. It's been in court now in 2024. It started in '08. I got $200,000-something invested in there. I took all the furniture in there. It's abandoned. The court case is a fight between the developer and 5 banks. You don't want to go there. That's why I insisted. Now, a week later, I was in a condominium that was above the other one because they said that they were going to do this and that in a week. And I looked at it and nothing happened. So I went back in like a month later, and they were in Tennessee, so I shot pictures. Nothing happened. I see, that's why I don't want you to give, because they really wanted to go for it. I give them the money. No. You know, and still nothing has happened because they don't have the money. The banks, the banks won't give them more money, and that's why Jaco happened also, because the banks wouldn't give them more money, and those who had bought, there were 26 of us, and we're all stuck with it. And worse even, there was $2.4 million of earnest money deposits from people who were buying in pre-construction, and they put the money in escrow, and the escrow company gave the money to the builder to keep building. And the option to purchase sale agreements were contracts that go into the National Registry, like I showed. Once the contract expires, it disappears from the registry because it expired. So now if you haven't sued them, and good luck suing because they were broke and the banks were suing them already, so stand in line. Actually, the municipality is suing us for paying back taxes because I stopped paying it like after 5 years. I said, I'm not going to pay anymore. And they said, no, it's an unfinished project. I said, no, it's an abandoned project. That's a whole different thing. So I requested to be declared not habitable. And they only did the parking spot. They wouldn't do the rest because they wouldn't allow them in the... But that's the kind of thing you don't want to be involved with. So if you buy from a developer, make sure you do this thing and use escrow, okay? Use your own attorney. Never accept working with a seller's attorney. decide if you want to buy in your own name a corporation, something to talk with your lawyer about. There's reasons you want to say, okay, I want my kids to inherit it. I want my kids to be on the title. There's a ton of, salud. Salud, we say in Spanish, salud. There's a lot of possibilities, but your lawyer will tell you what the best is. Okay, don't ask your agent, because your agent will. I have an opinion, but I'm not a lawyer. I didn't study to be a lawyer, so I can only give you my opinion. Do not take over existing corporations. A lot of these properties that were sold to North Americans and Canadians and Europeans during the boom years in 05, 06, 07 were bought into corporations. That because the lawyers had a nice little deal going on with shelf corporations. They had corporations ready, so they could put it in there, and then they would say, transfer the title and you're protected. And it was true in those days, because the story was, if you would have a property in your own name and you would kill a kid driving your car, the family could sue you for your property. If it was in a corporation, they couldn't sue you. I would suggest just get yourself a good insurance, right? It's that simple. But lawyers made good money on it, because they would sell those shell corporations for like $800. So it was nice extra money. But now with all the money laundering and terrorism issues, now you have to show who the owner is, so anybody can find out who the owner is. So the story of killing the kid is no good anymore. So don't take over an existing corporation, because you might be taking over a lot of problems. Okay, don't go there. Transfer it into your own name, your sister's name, your grandma's name, or your neighbor's name. I don't care, but don't use a corporation. How much time do I have left, Carlos? Wow, a lot of time left. My God, I don't know what happened. I don't want to talk about real estate that much, really. All right, licensing is not mandatory. So there is real estate licensing. There are two boards here. The one in Guanacaste, they are connected with the NAR in the US. So now you, Costa Rican or somebody here, can become an NAR realtor. I don't understand why they say it's good, because that's based on US law and on US real estate, and here it works totally different. So, and besides, because I see always a lot of discussions online mostly that people say, well, they have no licensing in Costa Rica, so there's no responsibility, which is totally correct. There's no insurance, no responsibility for making mistakes or whatever. Lawyers do, but realtors don't. But I must say that a license doesn't make a person honest. And that's really, I think, the most important thing. And a realtor is really easy to check out online and connect with people, and ask around. And that's what it's all about. Because a crook will always be a crook, and everybody will tell you it's a crook. It's that simple. And somebody who's been in business for 20 years is usually somebody who knows what they're doing, okay? 15 years is already good in this country. Like I said, the 2-day course in Spanish will make you all a realtor in Costa Rica in no time. And now I'm certified. Hey, wow, that's good. Many realtors catering to the foreign market don't speak Spanish. Yes, they speak your language. Remember what Romulo said. Romulo and I discussed that kind of thing a lot. People trust the people who speak their own language much easier than somebody that doesn't. But it doesn't mean that that person is honest or knows what he or she is doing. And so how can these realtors know? And I see that sometimes with my own affiliates. Our rules and regulations are really strong. And sometimes they want to list a property. It's like, no, you can't list it. There's a problem. For example, these corporations that I was telling you, people have to pay corporation tax. If they don't pay the corporation tax every year, the government will put a legal lien on them. Now, a lien on the title it will take 2 years to clear it. And I see agents listing a property with a legal mortgage on it. You can't list it, you can't sell it. You know, it's that simple. So why do you take the time and make the effort to list something and try to sell it? If you better get a buyer and the buyer has a good lawyer, the lawyer will say, sorry, you can't buy it. It's that simple. Okay? Okay. Go Dutch Realty, I cover with my agent the west side of San Jose. That's everything that's behind me. So from San Jose, Escazú, Santa Ana, Ciudad Colón, Atenas, and that's about it. I used to have one covering Grecia, but she went on her own last year. Now, the American European Real Estate Network, we have 29 agencies. I started that in 1995. Like a mini MLS, because we didn't have an MLS, with one agent in every location. I bought software that was called Lucero, and we would put the information, the listing information on a floppy and put it on the bus to the next agent. So the floppy would take about 2 weeks to drive around the country and be updated like that. That's how we worked in 1995, okay? Most of these agencies are still with me. They are affiliates. I earn a commission, Evo, earn a commission when I send you to their agents. So I send you to one of their agents and you're fully ready to buy. After closing, they will pay me 25% of their commission. I like everything clear, okay? That's why I write blogs. That's why I run a website. That's why I do things like this. I do 100,000 things like this. This is my living, besides my Go Dutch agents. And I'm getting less and less because they're a headache, because they give me a lot of work. These guys don't give me much work. They give me leads generating. But this is not, okay? Done with this. Thank you very much. Again, no obligation to buy from me or any of my agents. You do what you need to do. I'm there for you. If you need me, call me, send me an email. Email is always the best. If you want any information, I don't charge for information. I charge the seller the commission. You as a buyer don't pay anything. All right? Thank you very much.